Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen and variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. My name is Rotten Deadite, and with me today are...
I am James, also known as Aramithius.
Zells, also known as Zells.
And Felix, also known as Banuhana Masaishi.
And today we're doing Sermon 31, which is a... there's a lot of personal interpretation to happen here. This
It's
is
a
not
rude
a
sermon.
Yeah, it's a very poetic sermon. It's not a very factual one. Let's just hop right into it. Many more years passed in Resdania, and the high priests of the Dwemer were almost ready to make war with the rulers of Veloth. So immediately we've started, we're not doing the usual beginnings that we have had for a number of sermons. We're already into something different. The high
And this
priests
also
of the...
places it... well, I'm trying to think whether this places it in any reasonable context, because, well, the Battle of Red Mountain is 700. When the Nords were kicked out was 461. I don't know whether we can start dating it. We can possibly say it was somewhere in the 7th century of the First Era.
I'm thinking it's somewhere in the 600s. If the high priests of the Dwemer were almost ready to make war on the rulers of Veloth, which is interesting that Vivec is trying to suggest the idea that Veloth did not start this. Hey... Hey, they wanted to hurt us, not us, but that we're perfectly reasonable people, and, you know. The Hortator had become the husband of Iam during this time. Interesting, because when we first started all this stuff up, it seemed to us as though Nerevar had become, married, I guess, to Iam much earlier in the sermons than this. But here Vivec is suggesting this is the official moment. So Vivec with the fake news.
Well, yes, could be fake news after all the whole, hidden scripture. Vivec wrote this. There's that aspect of it. But also, do we maybe want to look at it as lowercase marriage versus capital M marriage?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, that's certainly possible. That this is also the moment where it says he became the first saint of the Triune Way. So this is the Tribunal Temple's first saint, apparently.
Yeah,
which you think would be weird. Do you think Veloth would be the first saint?
Well, Veloth is the first saint of the Velothi.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is once again Vivec drawing a difference between old Velothi, old Dunmaris tradition and the new Tribunal Temple.
Basically, their version of an ecumenical council.
Yeah, kind of.
It also suggests that the Triune Way, that the tribunal faith is already starting to coalesce to some degree. It's although it's difficult to place because the 36 lessons are claiming they were gods to start with. Yeah, and so if we're trying to apply any sort of real world, in inverted commas, chronology to this, that they were. It could just be something like they were just amassing power within the Velothi political system at this point.
Alternatively, that's just the power of the Heart of Lorkhan, baby.
Oh, once and therefore always?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Dragon Break.
Yeah.
It's all timey-wimey, gray maybe shit.
Yep,
what do I
timey-wimey.
That's exactly right.
Yep, and Thunder Angel which is a name I haven't seen before. Welcome to the Selectives Lorecast.
Yeah.
Thunder Angel is very right that history is written by the victors.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And in this case, being consciously, deliberately resculpted by Vivec. So I don't assume anything is necessarily factually true. He throws around the word metaphor and illusion so much.
Yeah, and tries to claim responsibility for almost every significant historical happening on Mundus.
Yeah, ever.
It was all me. I did it. Lord Vivec, Lord of Middle Air. Oh, so good.
I've been treated very badly, but all right.
The Nords have been very dishonest with us.
So Vivec had tired of fighting his sons and daughters, usually tired.
Shame.
And so took respite from trying to find them. The Hortator said to his wife, "Where is Vivec, my teacher? I love him still, though he grows cold. His lamentations, if I may call him that, have changed the skin of the whole country." So here we have another sort of attempt at Vivec that Vivec is trying to take credit for the idea of the Dunmer changing color.
Yeah.
Anything to keep the truth from getting out about Azura, I think, is what it is.
Yeah. But the idea that this is one of the things that kind of bugs me, because Divay fear is a thing. And
yes.
So you have people who were around supposedly when the change happened, and there's fuzziness. There is actual historical fuzziness about when it happened and how it works, despite the fact that there was a historical record at the time, whenever that time was.
Yeah, I have always wondered if Devathir got into cloning because he's trying to mine the Chimer back out of his genes so that he can have golden skin again.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because there were reports by other cultures looking in on the Dunmer and talking about how they were able to say simultaneously that, you know, they used to be gold and they were always gray and all these other kind of things, and that their rulers were mortal but also not. And the fact that they've sort of been
Icefire Warden has made a very good point in the chat, saying the Nelson Vivec effect. which
oh, that's brilliant. I love that. Also, hi Icefire Warden, it's been a while.
It has.
Yeah, right.
Well, and getting everybody to believe a false narrative so much that it actually becomes true, I think is part of the job of the sermons. I think that's why Vivek wrote them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's I had a thought there and then it just vanished.
Sorry, I entirely interrupted you.
He is hardly able to be found anywhere in Veloth of late. The people grow dark because of it. So I think he means by mood.
Why not both?
All right, could be. No,
because in Sermon 32 he says that he says about what's the wording? Velothi, your skin has become the pregnant darkness. My brooding has brought this on. So it is the skin change.
Yeah. And Iam took mercy on her troubled husband and told him that the sword of the Treant has been fighting monsters stirred up by the Dwemer as they worked on their brass siege engines. She took the Hortor inside her and showed him where his master was. That's okay. Are we still doing phrases?
Sounds like a pretty great night after a couple bottles of wine.
Oh yeah,
Vivek does love the double entendre, right?
Yeah, right. Or at least that.
The question. It's also the question of who the Hortator's master is. Is it Vivek, or is it at this point is it Iam? Because it gets to the mercy seat later in the sermon, and Iam and mercy and such like are all intertwined.
Well, we're gonna We're actually going to talk about Omsavi, or at least the aspect that chose to be Vivek. Sat in the litany hall of the false thinking temple after his battle with the flute pipe ogres of the West Gash. So this is a lot to get to here. So the Omsavi, or at least the aspect that chose to be Vivek, is once again sort of like reiterating the idea of Omsavi being one organism, but also split into three. One consciousness. Maybe self-satisfaction is his master. Vivek would argue that satisfying herself is the same thing as satisfying everybody. So, a gift to me is, as always, all things a gift to you.
Yes.
So now Vivek is sitting in the litany hall of the false thinking temple. I think this is Lai Rock. No? Oh, that's right. This is, UESP thinks this has something to do with the Temple of Boethia. I'm not sure where false thinking gets sort of put into the idea of Boethia. Maybe as like the Prince of Lies or something.
That would be Mephala more than.
It would be Mephala.
He supplanted her, so maybe it's that because he being the anticipation, not real.
Yeah,
he's real.
Yeah, I'm not sure where USB gets that idea. However, I don't think it has to be a Temple to Boethia or any Daedric prince. There was the Whirling School had their own halls and so on. It doesn't have to be anywhere that we're already familiar with.
Although thinking about another type of explanation altogether, are there any Daedric shrines in the West Gash in the Elder Scrolls 3?
Maybe that's what they're thinking. Maybe that's where USB is coming from, is that there's a in the West Gash.
Because Boethia's shrine.
Boethia's shrine is in the Bitter Coast.
Oh, okay, so that's well away from there.
Yeah. Where's the West Gash?
West Gash is sort of northwest. It's the northwest Foyada from
It's around
Red
Nissus, right?
I see it.
It leads to Nissus. It's a little bit away from there, but it does lead there.
All right, there's a shrine to Molag Bal. There's a shrine to Malakath, a shrine to Sheogorath, and a shrine to Mehrunes Dagon. That's interesting. All four House of Troubles.
Yeah, okay.
Are in the West Gash.
The House of Troubles is definitely false thinking because they will lead the Dunmer astray. That is their role.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be any one of those then.
Yeah.
Or all four.
Yeah.
Or all four.
Yeah, a metaphorical representation of all four. I can look at that. And I read sort of the flute and pipe ogres. I read ogres and I just think ogrims, but I'm not sure that they've necessarily been known to be musical anywhere. But if we're going with the idea of the false thinking temple being connected to the House of Troubles, then ogrims, I want to say, are they Malakaths or are they Baals or
ogres in general?
I think they're Malakaths, if memory serves me correctly, which it may not, admittedly.
I know the Scamps are Malakaths for some reason.
Ogres are considered to be goblinkin and worship Malakath like the orcs and goblins.
And so, no, sorry, I was thinking ogrims rather than ogres per se.
Oh.
Just thinking of that, because ogres do not occur in the Elder Scrolls 3, so I was thinking, what's the closest cognate? But give me a second, I will find that thing.
Every Daedric prince is said to possess legions of ogrims, among other common lesser Daedra.
Okay. That's fair enough. Yep. Also, no, Molag, I'm trying to think. Molag Bal and Mephala, according to sources in ESO, I think ESO is kind of muddying the waters here because they're desperate to not make them exclusive to any Daedric prince so they can reuse the same models everywhere.
Yep.
Because ogrims are primarily associated with Malakath, as per Darkest Darkness and some Morrowind era dialogue. So
Darkest Darkness. Darkest Darkness.
Yeah.
Sorry. I love that. So, I love the name of that book.
So yeah, Malakath is where they come from. So yes, they are associated with the House of Troubles to some degree, but why on earth they are flute and pipe? Why music? I don't know.
Sheogorath invented music in one of his stories.
This is true.
Yeah, and all of the servants of Dagoth were musically connected at points.
Yeah.
Is there any of the Hermaeus Mora lore that goes back to the Cthulhu flute playing, yellow robed, whatever guy that was?
Oh, the King in Yellow?
Yeah. Aren't there flute players, or is that a separate sub-deity? It seems like there's a Cthulhu thing that has to do with flute players.
I don't know Cthulhu.
It sounds familiar, but the King in Yellow is way before Cthulhu. Yeah, we know, but it seems like the Cthulhu mythos did a thing with flute playing creatures at some point. I'm almost sure of it, but I can't remember. Can't remember either. The flute players keeping Azathoth asleep. Oh, that sounds right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, he began writing again in his Book of Hours. He had to put on his water-faced first. That way he could separate the bronze of the old temple from the blue of the new and write with happiness.
That's interesting, because I read that and thought, hang on, it's a separation of Chimera and Dunmer, but the Chimera are universally golden-skinned rather than bronze, unless it's a deliberate smear by Vivec to try and make the Chimera seem less valuable than they were.
I think it's pretty obvious to make that Vivec's talking about the differentiation between the old Dunmer and the Chimera, or the Dunmer and the Chimera. And so let's talk a little bit about the Waterface.
Yeah.
So we know that water cannot lie because of its constant trembling.
It's too busy.
And we know that the Waterface is Vivec practicing telling the truth. Which I think is... Or not. Yeah, could be, or not.
No, there's an important distinction. Vivec is not lying with the Waterface. It does not mean that Z is telling the truth.
Okay.
I think there's a distinction to be made there.
All right. Yeah, I think that's actually important because of the way the history of Vivec works. Vivec can say, I used to be a god and I've always been a god, and not be lying. So I think what we could be saying instead of telling the truth is honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Or does the water face reduce ego?
I don't think it gets to the point of objectivity at all.
Okay.
But so I'm not sure it reduces ego because subjectivity is always going to be present. So it's I think it will then go to something closer to will, as in it's a recounting of events as perceived without motive.
Bias.
No, because it's always subjective truth. So, which is not necessarily the same thing. You've got so you don't have a reason to make a falsehood, but you may not have the whole truth because you did not see the whole room. So you can only tell what you saw, but you have no reason to change what you saw in the telling. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
So I would frame it a way in which I have been experiencing certain things in life, which is it's not that you're being dishonest, but you're not telling everything. Mm-hmm. So it's like you're only providing, like, you're not lying, but you aren't providing full context.
Yes. And sorry, I've just realized it's the water face because water refracts things, water blurs things, it obscures.
Mm-hmm.
So
interesting.
And if you think about it in regards to the drowned lamp as well, that you've not got a full and clear perspective, even with the water face, even though it gets rid of the possibility of lying.
That's interesting. I would have gone the other way with that, but I see your logic. So if water is memory, then my thought about putting on the water face is like going back into the memory to recount it as honestly as possible.
Uh-huh.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Does that mean that the water face is only applicable to memory?
That's Felix in chat is saying something very similar to that. I think.
Yeah.
And Felix in the podcast would also say something similar to that.
Okay, great.
The two Felixes are in agreement on this.
Synchronicity. I think...
Walk like him until he walks like you.
I think.
So is the Felix in podcast the real Felix, or is the Felix in chat the real Felix? We need an observer here.
Yeah, we
need to be able to tell them apart.
Oh, God,
you cannot tell
the
difference. Only you will need me for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who's prepared to be blinded to find out which Felix we've got here?
Hold on, I'll do it. Hey, I can't see shit. All right. So I think that that's probably the secret to understanding the concept of the water face is the idea of Vivec wears the water face in order to see memory, like as it was truly remembered and without motivation or like that, like, you know, so we're all aware that, like, over time memories can distort, and it's one of the reasons why police say eyewitness testimony is the worst kind of evidence you can have, because nobody ever remembers what actually happened. And I think that's what the use of the water face is to be able to go back and see and, like, relive the there's like the Harry Potter thing, to go back and relive the by the way, did anybody pick up on that shit in Harry Potter where they're like, oh, you can view memories by dunking your face in a puddle of water? And I was like, motherfucker. That is dank as shit. That's Elder Scrolls dank. That's what that is. And you know, and they you know, the memories are stored in a tear and stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, good. That's Kirk Bright as fuck. That's what that is. That's Coolman right there.
Just like lifting notes off of Elder Scrolls 3.
Yeah. I see you, JK. I see you. Fix your shit. All right. And so
in fairness, she wouldn't lift anything from Vivec because
because Vivec's intersexed. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's kind of, I think that's the way we need to think about this. So when Vivec is using the water face to separate Keimer from Dunmer and write with happiness, I think what Vivec's trying to do is to separate the tragedy of the event. of the split, emotionally divorce herself from the event and just view it as in the moment, so to speak. How I'm choosing to interpret with happiness is to view it in the moment without the pain of the experience.
Yes, it's emotional disassociation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second, he had to take another feather from the big moon, further rendering it dead. I'm pretty sure that's Masser, excuse me.
Masser, yeah.
Why does Masser have feathers?
Good question.
Other than birds, what has feathers?
Dinosaurs?
Sure.
Why? Okay, if there's
Angels?
another like
there's a thought.
Yeah.
Elves have feathers? Ooh.
Well, okay,
the aliens.
So
yeah, the aliens.
Like there's like the aliens with like feathers, and Topal the pilot saying, "Yeah, we totally encountered some bird people," which could easily be just people, whether they were elves or humans, adorning themselves in feathers. So like there's a couple possibilities, but I don't know. Chris, were you trying to get at something? Were you going to blow our minds? With,
no,
like...
I was spitballing.
Okay,
I was trying to figure a way around this that wasn't immediately like, well, it's a feather because it has to be a quill so that Vivec can write with it. Like, I thought that was a little too on the nose, a little too easy. So I was trying to see if there was another bit of like wisdom that we could gain from the idea of Masser having feathers.
Does it tie into the next sentence? That way he could write about mortals with truth?
Well, yeah, because the idea is that by pulling a piece of Masser, it's a piece of the god of mortals, of mortality. Right. And so that way, by writing with a piece of it, Vivec's able to, sort of divorce herself from, using the word divorce a lot, to separate herself from the dichotomy of mare versus men, of the Eldafe and the Wandering Eldafe.
Dragon, Eagle, Oriel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is kind of where my head was heading. IFW, it was sort of the idea of mare came down from the sky. Yes, exactly. Yeah, the idea of elves having a lot of eagle and bird motifs. Ariel's depiction in the Altmer religion is frequently bird-like, or at least or phoenixes, that kind of stuff. So I think maybe the idea is that maybe the what do you call them, gods before they became Aedra.
Eldafe.
No, not Eldafe.
Not Eldafe. Just the magical beings, the Atada.
Yeah, Atada. Thank you. The Atada were could be considered to be. Thank you, Felix. Yeah, could be considered like sort of bird-esque, or possibly like a. I'm getting a feeling of like the Native American Thunderbird here. Of a big sort of Phoenix-esque flying thing.
So less so about that, but like kind of similar, related to the idea of an angel. And I'm just like trying to look on the UESP for like anything to corroborate it, and not really, but it's just something that I've learned about, like at least superficially in real life, is a little bit about the Yazidi faith.
Oh,
so the prime, not the prime deity, but like the prime spirit of reverence in the Yazidi faith.
For those of us who don't know, who are the Yazidi?
The Yazidis are a minority Abrahamic religion, predominantly in Syria and parts of Iraq. They are often, unfortunately, referred to as Satan worshippers, and such have been ostracized throughout the entirety of their existence. But according to them, and this is broad strokes, and again, I'm like recalling information. It's not like, take this with like just the biggest dose of salt you can carry.
You chunky salt.
Hand, okay?
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Like big old rock salt, not just a grain, a big old rock of salt. but their main understanding of the worldview is that God, the Abrahamic God, created all of existence, and when it came to humans and everything, it was actually a test for the other angels. And the peacock angel, who actually pushed back on God a bit, saying, well, wait a second, I have some thoughts and questions about these creations of yours. That meant that the peacock angel passed God's test and was thus king of all the angels, and thus kind of the grand adjudicator of mankind. And that's why, according to other Abrahamic faiths, such as Christianity and Islam, they say, oh, see, that's Shaitan, that's Lucifer, that's the morning star, that's bad, big no-no. But for them, it's a different understanding of, like, it's not a bad spirit, it's a good and thoughtful spirit that is tending here because God's got like bigger things to worry about. And that's the main idea. And so peacocks, like, you know, birds, they have feathers, and like the idea, like, I find that there's a very similar connection there with how the Yazidi faith represents the peacock angel to how Lorcan is depicted and treated by various cultures within the Elder Scrolls universe. To some, he is like the main prime evil that, you know, oh, curse you, you gave us existence, blah. And to others, it's like, no, this is actually a blessing and a gift. So we're going to absolutely support this dead god. And there's a part of me that thinks, like, maybe there's a connection there, but it is tenuous at best, I will admit.
I'm very, very hesitant to connect the moons in this instance to Lorcan, because if we're going with, particularly if we're going with IFW's idea of Mer coming down from the sky and men rising up from the mountains and just climbing their way to divinity, then Lorcan as the champion of men would be something that is not associated with something that's already airborne like a bird. So it's an elven motif that's being used there. So is it something that
Draylen's pointing out the Skyforge in chat.
Oh, yes, that's...
Which definitely has a big old eagle motif going.
Yes. I could never unpack what the Skyforge was all about.
Same. Yeah, well, it was supposed to be something that the Nords recovered. It was there, like, they moved it. It wasn't always where it is now.
And the Falmer were afraid of it.
Yeah, well, are they?
Yes.
I'm
sure someone was afraid of it.
Okay.
And I think that it was something to do with the elves being afraid of it. My memory is fuzzy on that score. It didn't really explain why. But, yeah, it's... I don't know whether that's necessarily connected with this, though, because it's not writing anything, and why would Vivec be writing something in Skyrim?
Yeah, Draylen, they found it. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought they found it and then moved it into Whiterun, but it was always where it is now in Whiterun? Okay. Yeah, and if I recall correctly, it was supposedly left there by the elf. So I guess by the Elnathay.
Originally?
I don't think it was supposed to be Dwarven, no.
No.
It's not gold medal.
They did build it around okay. Yeah. Chat's insisting that Whiterun was built around it. So. Nords liked it because the elves didn't. Well, yeah. That sounds right.
I mean, to be fair, like, that'd be a very Nord way of thinking.
Yeah.
IFW's come up with a quote from somewhere.
The soft doctrines of Magnus the Invisible,
which is the recent big lore drop from I can't remember who. I can't remember the name. My brain's doing a brain fail. But it's one of the old devs. But the feathered were the first to see the falling stars.
Not Tuttle.
No.
Okay.
No.
Douglas Goodall.
It was Goodall. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. We need to do an episode on it at some point, I'm sure.
I'm Googling it because this is the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, me too. So is that is there a copy in the Imperial Library? Imperial Library.
It's 4 lines in the UASP. Don't get excited.
No. It's big. It's a lot. It's
the
got a
text
hidden
can be
message
seen here.
Everything.
No, it is big. Okay.
It's juicy. It's juicy.
Okay.
Please share it in the chat.
It references Periite as the shadow of Akatosh, so it's going
awesome.
deep into there.
Interesting. He decided to complete and give this obscure text some context. Note the 5th doctrine contains a substitution cipher. The solution for it is here.
The secret message has already been unpacked.
Fuck.
Yeah,
I will give the solution ciphertext and post 3 solved ciphers.
It's been done in the community, been around in the community for about a week or maybe not even that, and it's already been deciphered.
Oh, it's dope.
Yes,
I love this community.
There's a lot there. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
This is what I get for not keeping up on the forums, man. This is I miss really good shit like this.
Yeah, but like you also have to deal with the forums, which I mean.
The serpent is bound with shifting tones. Magnus is bound in metal flames. Nern is bound in secret knots.
There's a lot
this
there.
is good. Yeah, we're gonna have to do a whole episode on this. This needs to get unpacked.
There we go. Right after the 36 lessons.
Absolutely.
No, we're doing after the 36 lessons. We're doing
Truth and Sequence.
Truth and Sequence. Yeah, and then we're doing. Then we're definitely doing this. This is good. This is really good. Copy.
Yeah.
Paste.
Wow.
I'm proposing that here and now that we actually do something we've never done before. Have a shared Google Drive copy of this that we can just post our annotations.
Yeah, we may have to.
Go through.
This is super good. Oh, thank you so much, chat. Oh my god, IFW, you a hero, bro.
I'm shocked you didn't hear about it. I was going to bring it up after the cast.
I'm very disappointed in myself.
Yeah.
Claps in chat for Icefire Warden.
IFW, as usual, a goddamn paragon of the community.
Yes.
Right? So glad I know him.
The 555th sermon? I don't know anything about that.
Should we actually get back to sermon 31?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
James, how dare you?
If you insist.
How dare I drag us back on topic for the...
Yeah, really, come on.
Probably
you've been a part of this podcast for how long?
How many years have we been doing this?
Probably for the 1008th time.
Yeah.
Can we get back on topic, please?
All right. So that way he could write about mortals with... Okay. Third, he recalled the pomegranate banquet where he was forced to marry Molag Bal with wet scriptures to cement his likeness as Mephala and write with black hands. Okay. So 3 things that he's done, that Vivec has done here. Okay. First off, Waterface so that Z can recall memory with, without emotion, in the moment. Secondly, needs to write about mortals truthfully, without truth as in like without emotional
embellishment.
Yeah. And third, recalled the pomegranate banquet so that he could write with black hands. So why is the I've covered this before, but I just want to reiterate, why is the pomegranate banquet relevant to writing with black hands? What does writing with black hands mean? Mephala has black hands because Mephala, I don't remember the exact phrase.
Let's find that.
Yeah, it's in the lessons.
Okay. According to the Codes of Mephala, there is no difference between the theorist and the terrorist. Even the most cherished desire disappears in their hands. This is why Mephala has black hands.
Mephala has black hands because Mephala destroys desire.
Oh, I read it that either that or just destroys it. Actually, no, it is the desire that's being destroyed. It's not the thing being desired that gets destroyed.
Exactly. Yeah. So
it's Buddhism, baby.
It is. Well, it's Buddhism. It's also one of the aspects of Thelema that it borrows from Buddhism. Well, what's one of the things the aspects of Buddhism that Thelema borrows? To be specific, it's an idea that Aleister Crowley got from yoga, which is the idea of not trying to do. And when you're in yoga, they tell you just don't think about doing it. Just don't try to do it. Just do it. Do or do not. There is no try. They say if you want to get into the position that you want to get into, don't think about getting into the position. Think about how to get into the position and then do that. Don't concentrate on getting into the position. Just concentrate on doing it. Just
yoga,
do it right. Yeah.
Yoda? Coincidence? I think not.
So what Vivec has put herself into is this position of talking about the past without embellishment, talking about mortality without embellishment, and then getting herself into a state of without desire. So in other words, in some totality, you can say all three of these steps move Vivec towards a position of performing the writing in the Book of Hours without desire of any kind. Okay, of just performing the process of writing. You know.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, to any extent that we're assuming that Vivec is mantling Mephala, taking over Mephala, and that's fuzzy because mostly they just needed to replace the things that have been before. But yeah, is there any stories about Mephala and Molag Bal where he attacks Mephala? Is that why it had to be like this?
Not that I'm aware of. The reason why the event of the pomegranate banquet was useful for Vivec to reach to abandon desire or destroy desire is because the act of submitting herself to Molag Bal reduced her ego.
Yes.
To the point where Z was no longer thinking about success and achievement and satisfying her need, and it just becomes entirely about submission.
Yeah.
Which is the state that arguably Vivec can reach in order to just concentrate on the task that needs to be done and submit herself to the just to the performance of the task and not to the desire of things, you know. Is BDSM a good way to go about doing this? I'm sure there's better ways to do it.
Well, it's Vivec's way.
It's Vivec's way, yeah. Now, I mean, in Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk a lot about submitting yourself to a higher power, surrendering to a higher power, because they are trying to encourage the idea of people admitting that they are powerless against their addiction. Yes. Which is an important point to fighting addiction, is that you have to basically learn to be afraid of it, kind of.
And it's not about willpower. It's part of the little lesson.
Yeah, willpower doesn't enter into it. It is a biological function. It is a need like eating. That addiction is that bad. And so if you want to truly beat something that has that much of a hold on you, you have to approach it from the perspective of it is more powerful than I am, and I have to therefore surrender myself to the concept of something that is more powerful than I am, which is why Alcoholics Anonymous is frequently mistaken for being like a Christian thing.
Yeah.
It's not a Christian organization. It's not it's just, that's a good way to go about. Oh, hi, and like whatever you're about to get banned.
We have a bot.
Yeah.
We have.
Oh, what? Let me see this.
We have someone advertising in chat.
Yeah, hold on.
Where? I missed it. Oh,
ban. There we go.
Oh well. I was also saying this kind of vaguely reminds me about at least this more modern interpretation of Christian marriage as to how some of them how some of the more awkward passages in some of Paul's letters gets described and interpreted, because it overtly has. I'm paraphrasing, so do not so this is fuzzy. The bit that gets slammed on is the bit saying "Wives, submit to your husbands," and that sort of stuff. The bit that people gloss over when they think about that is the instruction for husbands is for husbands to love their wives as Christ loves the church.
Yeah.
And what did Christ do for the church? He died for it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all submission is what it is.
Yeah, I've heard it described as a submission competition.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the idea of everyone putting other needs first. So yeah, that ties into it as well. It's the idea of just kind of tying yourself through what submission actually means and how that's expressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's if you want to look into other more modern interpretations of this idea, there's Leadership Through Service, I think it's called. Yeah. It's a book that they give to everybody who makes any noises about entering into management at some point or another. The company you work for, some asshole is going to hand you this book. It's actually a really great piece of like sort of like social philosophy. It's just that people tend to read it and then not fucking follow it. But
like
but they're going to make damn well sure that you read it, and anyway. So okay, Zero. Last time I heard his voice showing the slightest sign of impatience, I learned to control myself and submit to the will of others. This is Vivec talking about Molag Bal, obviously.
Yep.
Afterwards, I dared to take on the sacred fire and realized there was no equilibrium with the Atata. So, excuse me. So, equilibrium is Molag Bal's enemies with Boethia and not Mephala. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mephala's only enemy is Periite.
Oh, this is going by the Daggerfall allies and enemies.
Why Periite, do you think? IFW, you know more about Periite than any man in existence. Why?
That is
why
true.
would Mephala? No. Afterwards, I dared to. Okay, so afterwards, I dared to take on the sacred fire. This is the fire that burns away all desire.
Is this the sacred fire or the secret fire? Are they the same thing?
They are kind of the same thing. So when Vivec talks about the fire is mine, let it consume thee. That's the fire. Yeah, it's there seems to be at many points in the 36 lessons Vivec will use the term fire to describe a lot of sometimes what seems like disparate concepts. They're actually all the same thing, and you have to kind of study. Period is also walking away now. That's news to me.
What?
That sounds like ESO stuff.
I'm curious because if you're tying this in with I've forgotten the name of the data that we're even talking about at this point. But we've talked about Mephala. I'm starting to compare this to if we look at the fire is mine, let it consume thee.
Right.
That's the Boethia prayer.
Yes.
And so that we've got 2 out of the 3 good Daedra. Is there any other links to Azura at this point? I don't think at the point that that Kirkbride was writing this. I'm just seeing if we have representations of the 3 good Daedra in the sermon.
Possibly.
Because I think we have 2 out of 3.
Let's get through the whole thing and then see where we end up. But put a pin in that and we'll try to remember.
Cool.
Or, excuse me, that's not corporate enough. Put a pin in that and we'll circle back around in a breakout meeting. There you go.
Excellent.
Wow. Okay. Never working for you.
Awesome.
I'm awful, dude. I feel really bad that I can spit that shit out, but I can.
Okay, we'll kick it down the road and touch base a little later.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. CC me on that thread, would you?
Oh God.
Okay, so I dared take on the sacred fire and realized there was no equilibrium with the Atata. So what is equilibrium in this particular sentence, and why is it important?
The sword in the center, and the center will not hold.
Well, keep in mind that we're going to go on from here and say that they were liars, lost roots. The most I can do is to be an interpreter for the rational. Okay, so no equilibrium with the Atata. That's not the Aedra.
Atata, right. Yeah, fair point.
All right.
Yeah. Equilibrium would be a point of balance where the cycle can continue itself.
Right. I'm sorry, James, you got an idea?
If we're thinking the Daedra, they turn in on themselves and progress no further, so there is no progress towards equilibrium. The Aedra decides to die and end everything.
Form the wheel,
and I don't know whether there's something physics of riding a bicycle, because because I remember hearing somewhere that if the physics of actually riding a bicycle so that it goes forward is just ridiculously complicated because you're always kind of fluctuating in and out of stability. So wheels are not inherently stable things, is my sort of end thought there. And so the idea of sort of creating the mundus and so on is not to produce stability. It's not to produce some kind of end state at all, or at least not within the Erebus. My thought, if we're thinking about creating Mundus as Lorcan's plan, then it's escaping the Erebus is the ultimate goal. So that although given that Vivec is quite Lorcanic in here outlook, it's a bit weird to say that they're not quite enough.
No, it makes sense because if the Itada and the creation of Mundus and the Aedra and everything were a line to equilibrium, then it would be a line to stability, to constant. But every Kalpa, everything gets thrown back into the loop again. So if the equilibrium is important to Vivec, because if something has true equilibrium, if something is truly equal, then it can exist just vibrating by itself permanently. It's permanently balanced. And so what Vivec is saying is basically the idea of the Itada coming together and creating something does not create an end or a constant state. It creates something that has to end.
We are assuming also that equilibrium is a good thing at this point. I
wouldn't argue
that.
Okay, no, hang on.
I think it's something Vivec thinks is a good thing.
Yeah.
Sort of, yeah, because what I think Vivec is talking about the difference between is intrinsically is talking about the idea of the infinite in perfection and divinity. So a perfection, a perfect existence for Vivec is one that can exist indefinitely. But as Vivec will attest, the divinity that Vivec achieved cannot last forever. It's unpleasant in many respects. The divinity that the Itada have does not last forever, demonstrably by the Kelpic cycle.
Right.
So the only thing that in the Buddhist sense, the only thing of any value is that which is everlasting, which for the Buddhists means like the soul.
There's a lot of Buddhist thought in this paragraph.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Buddhism, I would also like to offer the parable of, and it's relevant to other schools because of music, the parable of Buddhism about proper balance within like the idea of Buddhism and karma is often attributed to tuning a stringed instrument.
Yes.
Too tight and the string will break. Too loose, it won't produce any tone at all. But the most beautiful tone exists when it is actually in perfect
middle road,
balance or equilibrium, therefore the middle way. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Well, it's not necessarily equilibrium, it's tension.
Yes.
Tension, but like the idea of it, like, and how it's phrased as a parable is that it's not one way too far to the other, not too tight, not too loose. Only in the center can music be made.
Golden mean, everything in moderation, sort of stuff.
Yeah. Including moderation.
Yeah,
we can kill a few billionaires as a treat.
Yeah.
which is something that is actually in Aristotle's philosophy, that it's everything where it is appropriate. So your spouse dies, it is appropriate, therefore, to be consumed by grief at that point. And so an excess of emotion is entirely right, and so on. It's not, oh, you must feel bad, but not too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. But anyway.
Yeah. So Vivec says they were liars, lost roots. This is, I mean, we get the idea of lost roots, I think, right, as a metaphor of
I would look at that with again, this is ESO era lore, but I think about roots as in the Hist and how they're portrayed within Argonian lore. I was thinking of lost roots, and then you start to look at the Elnathay and the Hist as survivors of the 12 worlds and that side of things. I don't know whether that's the intention at all, because that conception didn't exist when this was written.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Not in the real world.
I think
I was thinking of ancestral roots.
Yeah, okay.
that we're kind of broken away from now, or that they brought it out from underneath us.
That's kind of.
I was thinking of the comfy Canadian clothing brand. So,
yeah, I can see that.
So all I can do is be an interpreter into the rational. So what an interpreter into the rational would be someone who digests or rephrases, repackages. But why the rational, like, as opposed to the irrational? Is the interpreter into the sane? Is an interpreter
it's
into
someone who makes sense of something in the most literal sense of the term.
Yeah,
makes
everybody is
sense.
Everybody is suffering under a group psychosis that the world is real, and
right.
Vivek is going to interpret that into what is true.
I like that. Yeah, that's really good.
Even that fails the needs of the people, which is true. You can't just sit there and tell them the reality of the world, and they're like, yes, but I have no bread on my table.
Yeah.
I sit on the mercy seat.
Also, in the end, most of the people are not going to get on Vivek's new arc and make it into the fifth era. So no matter what Vivek does, the majority of people that Vivek wants to save and bring with them are not going to make it, no matter how good he tries or how hard.
Well, speaking of the arc, I sit on the mercy seat and pass judgment, the waking state, and the phase aspect of the innate urge. Ooh, boy. Okay. So we've already covered what the mercy seat is. It's the throne upon which God comes down and passes judgment on Israel. Or I should say on the I think it was built on top of the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
Yes, it was. And it's kind of it's surrounded by two cherubim, so it's all kind of the center focus point of the innermost holy of holies within Judaism.
And the idea is that it's the one place in all of existence where God can manifest itself.
Yes.
Without fear of it comes down to the idea of God being like of the mortal world being a place that God cannot exist in, because God is everything that the mortal world isn't. And so Vivek says he sits on the mercy seat and passes judgment, the waking state, and the phase aspect of the innate urge. So the waking state, I think, is a sort of a way to talk about viewing truth as awake and not experiencing the dream that everyone else is experiencing. An enlightened state.
Okay, because my interpretation of that was it's more like when you get to talk to Vivek near the end of the main quest line in Morrowind, explaining the difference between being asleep and awake. That's kind of what I felt. It was like the waking state is Vivek's air quotes mortal aspect there on like Nirn and in Mundus, as opposed to Vivek's dreamlike state where Vivek the god is like doing shit out in Aetherius and whatnot. That was my broad strokes understanding.
Is that where Z talks about being dead and then deciding to wake up again?
Just deciding to wake up.
Yeah.
There's also the ego versus subconscious knowledge on that.
Yeah. Before we get too much into the weeds of this, can I just unpack the grammar a little? Because I'm honestly not sure how on earth it relates. Because it talks about I sit on the mercy seat and pass judgment. I'm fine. I'm fine with that as a clause. And then comma the waking state. It's just I do a thing. Other thing.
And
I have
the phase aspect of the innate urge.
That.
Yeah. Because you're just presented with a list.
It's
weird. But Zells, go with it.
I have a lot of thoughts about this paragraph. This is, I believe, this sermon is the only time that Vivek uses first person.
Yes.
In the entire thing. Up to this point, Vivek is it's always been third person. Vivek does this, Vivek does that, and consistently uses the he him pronouns, by the way, which is why I always use he him pronouns, because I feel like that's what Vivek told me to do. But anyway, that's beside the point. So we know that Vivek's childhood was not awesome, and my interpretation of the early sermons is that Vivec's mother was a skooma addict, and that very early on, Vivec had to be taking care of himself and her. And then by the time we meet Vivec for the first time in What My Beloved Taught Me, he's already this hardened, sharp, street knowledge kid, and running a gang older than he is. Again, being this authority figure over people older than he is. But doing everything that he can to claw his way to some measure of security. But we know at that point that Vivec is a sex worker. So I heard his voice showing the slightest signs of impatience. I learned to control myself and submit to the will of others. That means that's the first time of all of the abuse that Vivec has suffered, of all of the things that he would have gone through living on the streets and with his mom, who probably pimped him out early. This is the first time that he has submitted without fighting back and really been part of this. And it's because there was a goal. But all of the descriptions that are in the sermon where the pomegranate banquet happens that are so, I could get out at any time, that may have been true, but if Vivec is on his way to Kim through this experience, then if you use the safe word, you fail. You've got to get through to the end of it. So he, as you were saying before, there has to be total submission for real. So whatever it was that happened between them, Vivec actually, it did hurt. However he describes it earlier, this sentence to me proves that this was unique and different and really hurt in a way that nothing else had before.
I'm having Gon Jafar vibes at that sort of description. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Why do that then? Well, afterwards I dared to take on the sacred fire. So in Buddhism, there's the discussion, there's the goal of enlightenment, and you let go of your ego, and you become one with everything, and eventually you achieve this moment of actually being one with everything, and you feel the love and the joy of the universe and all of that. That's the people who have said to have achieved it come back with this great sense of peace. Vivec claws his way to power his whole life, gets to this threshold, steps across it, and finds out that reality is actually a pyramid scheme. And the center cannot hold, and the Edada lied. And much like, I keep having this image in my mind of Vivec as like a 5-year-old coming home, and, there's no food, and mom's passed out. And where is the grown-up who is going to show up and take care of this, right? And this moment of trying to achieve Kim, stepping in and becoming one with everything, that's the moment where you meet capital G God, and you find out that no matter what the strife is down on the mortal coil, it's all going to be okay. And Vivec has this moment, and instead of finding out that it's going to be okay, he finds out that it's all awful, and he is the grown-up in the room somehow. If there's going to be an ark, he's got to build it. And all he wanted was, I'm projecting now maybe a little bit too much, but you'd think you get to this point, you actually get to, don't you get some peace out of that? No, Vivec does not. So that little 5-year-old Vivec still living in Vivec's heart with hope that somehow it was all going to be okay. This is the moment where that little piece of Vivec dies. And from then on, he says, okay, so none of that works. I'm going to try to be an interpreter of the rational, but even that's going to fail. I sit on the mercy seat and pass judgment. That can be one person doing that, but it can also be two. So mercy seat being kind of a mother role and passing judgment being kind of a father role. And then the waking state being consciousness, being sort of a masculine energy. And then the phase aspect of the innate urge being more of a feminine energy. So he's stepping in as and this is all dressed in terms of like state and church. So he's going to be everything to everybody because he's Vivec and he can do that. But he's terrified. Only here can I doubt in this book, broadened to include evil. In order to talk about doubt, we have to be talking about evil because that is the biggest evil, to doubt yourself. If being true to yourself, being true to your nature is the way to Kim, then doubt is the way off. So he can't, now that he's come up with this plan, now that he's seen that someone needs to build an ark, Vivec has to commit to it wholly and can never doubt that, which means never being vulnerable with another person. At this point, like seeing the entirety of what lies before him. And then he throws ink on it to cover it up.
He throws what to cover it up, sorry?
The next paragraph, the next
ink.
sentence. Yeah, he throws ink on the passage to cover it up.
Yeah.
This whole paragraph breaks my heart.
Mm. Yeah,
So
hang on. Yeah, I sit on the mercy. Yeah, I sit on the mercy seat and past judgment, the waking state, and the phase aspect of the innate urge. Yes, that's Vivec trying to be all things to all people. It's trying. It's saying I am trying to do all of these things. Reading it in that context, yes. Yeah.
I love IFW's comment. Went back in time, found the adult, shot the adult, then became the adult. So he went back in time, so he was the child.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
God bless you, IFW.
Yes.
So it is a list, I guess, is what we're getting at here. It's a list of all the things that Vivec is trying to do for Veloth.
Yes.
Only here can I doubt in this book written in water broadened to include evil.
Yes, and that's the I have to do all of this stuff and I can't talk to anyone about it sort of thing.
Nobody knows.
No one knows what I am. It's just like in the last sermon. No one knows what I am.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is similarly the whole thing, but going back to the other moment of doubt that Vivec had in sermon 18 or so. This kind of I don't know what I am. Tell me what I am. Sort of thing. And then it's kind of and then this is kind of the mirror to that, saying I am all this.
Yeah, and I don't really want any of it.
No.
Yeah.
Luke Noodles, Vivec, living god of needing therapy.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is that very famous image of Vivec lounging on a chair, so it's kind of like, it's almost like a therapist chair if you squint at it and ignore the caption. So,
so then Vivec threw ink on this passage to cover it up for the lay reader and wrote instead. So this is Vivec erasing what Z wrote all over all of that stuff about who I really am and what I actually do, and.
But only for the lay reader.
Yeah, but only for the lay reader, which we are not, because we're allowed to see this somehow. So once again, who is the 36 lessons written for?
Mm-hmm.
The Hortator.
Is it for the Hortator? Is it for the Nerevarine? Is it for, What do other people see when they read this sermon? Who knows? Do they get 1 point better at athletics? Who can say?
I'm slightly better at doing track and field, which I fucking hate. All right, cool.
Very strange. Big black page, but suddenly I can run faster. Find me in the blackened paper, unarmored in final scenery. So this is, I think we get unarmored. Final scenery, I think, is supposed to be about, like, this is the end of the play. This is the summarization, the who I am. Truth is like...
it's like unarmed, come to God unarmed and wreathed in terror.
Yeah.
Which brings in the black hands side of thing, hence blackened paper. This is paper touched by Mephala and such like.
So truth is like my husband, that's Molech Ball, instructed to smash, filled with procedure and noise, hammering, weighty, heaviness made schematic, lessons learned only by a mace. So we're about to, like, the next sermon's going to be all about that shit.
Yep.
Oh boy, here we
go.
go.
Truth is always equated with blunt force violence.
With violence.
Always, always. And so truth is the thing that is an imposition. It is truth is violence because you are making something the case.
Yeah. Let those that hear me be buffeted, and let some die in the ash from the striking. So this is, if you accept the truth of Vivec, then let it build you up. But you know what? If you're weak sauce, then, get good.
Yeah. Deal with it.
We didn't need you on the arc anyway.
Yeah, you weak ass.
Get good, scrib.
Yeah. Let those that find him murdered, find him murdered by illumination, pummeled like a traitor's house, because if an hour is golden, then immortal I am in secret code. Well, goodness. Okay, so let those that find him murdered by illumination. This is the person who dies from the striking. UASP's got a link to dissident priests. Oh, sure, I guess.
Yeah, and also it feels Plato-ish on that sort of a reading, because the allegory of the cave, when the prisoner breaks free from the cave, goes out and sees the real world, comes back and tries to tell the people who are still tied up in the cave and watching the shadows of things. They don't believe that person and they kill them.
Mm-hmm.
So that feels like that sort of a thing fits. Let those that find him. Who's the him in this status?
The person who has been pummeled.
Yeah. The person who has suffered for the truth. Mm-hmm. That whole thing just feels like a Plato's allegory moment.
Yeah.
Just all over. And I'm not sure that doesn't really fit with the rest of Vivec's philosophy, because Platonism doesn't really strike me as what Vivec is striving for, because there is an ultimate reality according to Plato.
It's not, but I think that a lot of Vivec's philosophy starts with Plato, the idea of there being truth. But I think Plato saw truth as being like an absolute thing that you may or may not be able to obtain, but that doesn't matter because it's right. And Vivec's argument is that truth exists, but it's not right. It's not an absolute that's determined by God or perfection or whatever.
Yeah. Isn't Plato the one that has the allegory about the metaphor about the shadows on the wall?
That's the allegory of the cave.
That's what I very poorly explained, because the shadows aren't the point. Sorry.
Sorry.
It's that the person who sees the real world comes back and is murdered is the point I was getting at.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is appropriate to those touched by Dagothar, because it's actually the pummeled like a traitorous house.
Yeah.
So the idea here is that, the people those who have died in the ash from striking have been murdered by illumination. They have been pummeled like Dagothar's traitorous house.
And striking what? I hear murdered in the ash from striking.
The striking of the mace the mace of truth,
which strikes the heart.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is Sunder Keening stuff.
Yeah. Exactly. This is stuff that determines reality. The way that they use the tools to create. Well, next sermon we're gonna get all into about how the mace and violence and so on determines truth, which determines reality. So, lessons learned only by a mace. Yeah, we're gonna get into that. Let those that hear me be buffeted. Oh, I already read that shit. Pummeled like a traitor's house, because if an hour is golden, then immortal I am in secret code. Okay. All right. If an hour is golden, so what's the golden hour? Everybody knows what this is, right?
Nope.
Okay,
it's the best hour for taking photos.
Yeah, when you shoot photography, there's something called a golden hour, which is like an hour when the sun is very low on the horizons, just before the sunset has started, and you get this really lovely golden glow all over everything. It lasts roughly an hour, depending on what season you're in. And every fucking wedding photographer out there, or anybody who's ever had wedding photographs taken, knows how absolutely insane everybody gets when the golden hour is about to hit. And it's now we have to do all the stuff. We have to do all the poses while the light is perfect. We have to shoot while the light is right. We have to do it right now because we don't do color correction, apparently. And so I've never understood that shit. So everybody, everybody has to panic and scramble. We have to go to all the locations and shoot everything really fast. And time is experience, but gold is incorruptible. That's where I'm going to get married at midnight. Yeah, right. Yeah, get married at like 2 a.m. And so so if an hour is golden, then immortal I am in secret code. So the secret code that we know of course, obviously we can talk about the secret code of the lessons in the previous sermon 29.
And the codes of Mephala.
Yeah, and the codes of Mephala. Yeah. I am the partaker of the doom drum. This is obviously Vivec talking about how they beat on the heart of Lorcan. chosen of all those that dwell in the middle world to wear this crown, which reverberates with truth, and I am the mangling Messiah.
Ruling king, yep.
Yeah, basically.
I wasn't so sure about that.
Yeah, the mangling Messiah sounds, again, a lot like Duke Leto II to me.
Possibly. And bearing in mind that Messiah has a whole bunch of different connotations, it's not just... it is a Messiah is one who is anointed.
Yeah, who brings a message.
No.
No,
it's just
you're right.
It's just someone who is anointed. Someone who is... It's literally someone who has oil poured on their head, which is the idea of and that's generally someone who is marked for something. So it's in Old Testament era Hebrew, it's the idea of a king or a priest. Both those were two offices that were anointed in order to signify them as what they are. And so this is someone who is I am saying I am the Messiah, as well as being a very naughty boy, just to get that gag out of the way. You've got it's saying that you also this is someone who is appointed to mangle, someone who is set apart to do this mangling or such like, which is why it relates to all of the stuff before, the chosen of all those who dwell in the middle world to wear the crown, which reverberates with truth. So it's the idea of the ruling king being someone who imposes their truth on the world and mangles all else.
And actually, I think chat kind of just hit on it, or specifically IFW did. The idea of if an hour is golden, I think it can be interpreted as if an hour can be eternal. So if time can be frozen, if time can be eternal, if a moment in time can be eternal, then immortal I am in secret code. I think that's a reference to Vivec basically saying that if something temporary can become permanent, in other words, if Vivec, a mortal, can become a god, then immortal I am in secret code, as has been explained in Sermon 29.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although that then implies that Vivec becomes a god because they murdered Nerevar.
Which again, that brings us to the secret message. So it all kind of tracks.
Yeah, but it's not the murdering of Nerevar that makes Vivec a god. It's the striking of the heart of Lorcan and everything else, which is why it doesn't.
Yeah,
which Vivec would not have been able to do that if Nerevar had not been murdered.
Okay,
If there's a security guard who's standing between me and immortality, probably gonna roll the dice and kill the security guard, so that I can achieve immortality. It's like that's a small price to pay.
That was a good Freudian slip there.
Yeah, security god. All right, can't wait for the fan art of that. It's like a giant shrine to Paul Blart.
So this is going to be so this really is leading us well into the next sermon, which we'll cover in 2 weeks.
If we're lucky.
well, so James is going to do a lot of lifting there, because we're going to talk a lot about truth and and the philosophy of truth, the idea of truth, the way different philosophies consider truth.
Okay, right. I will get in training. I'll get lifting them weights.
Yeah. But that's going to wrap up 31.
Is it really 2 weeks? Because I think 2 weeks is Thanksgiving weekend.
Oh, is it? Yes. No, you're right. So the next one is actually the 2nd, so 3 weeks. Yeah.
Okay, 3 weeks. Yeah.
Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah.
And I may not be able to make that one. There might be a community association meeting. I'd have to double check.
Okay. Well, so they mug them to become gods. Yeah, that's what they do. Become as gods. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We will see you in 3 weeks.
Yes.
Everybody,
bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.